Hello, this is our group debate presentation. We will be presenting on the right to exercise personal liberties versus the need for habilitation. My name is Emily Kemp.
My name is Brittany Andrews.
My name is Jessica Coleman.
My name is Emma Pritchett.
And my name is Paige Wonderlin.
Here is the overview for our presentation. This debate will be an informal debate as the members of our team did not pick a side to argue for or against. First, we will dive into each side of the debate and discuss what the topic of personal liberties is. Then we will go into the habilitation side. We will then talk about an article that we found very helpful to this topic as it goes in depth about what each side of the debate is on. Next, we will go more in depth on the personal liberties discussion with ethics codes relevant and 2 case studies related to personal liberties. Last, we will go into the pros and cons of personal liberties before then talking about the habilitation discussion. Ethics codes relevant will be talked about along with 2 more case studies, then pros and cons to habilitation will be given. Finally, we will touch base on the fine balance and what it looks like, and present our closing arguments along with the resources that we used for this presentation.
What is the right to personal liberties? Liberty is the right of a person to do as they please, assuming their actions do not violate any laws or infringe on the right of others. Personal liberties allows people to live as they choose without interference from others unless it is for a good, legally established reason. The United States is a country founded on principles of justice and equality for all citizens. When the Declaration of Independence was signed in 1776, it clearly emphasized several themes intended to serve as the basis for the new government, including important ideals about equality, life, and liberty. Basically, that all men are created equal. Personal liberties for an individual with disabilities is creating what life means for themselves. Providing choice has the effect of increasing an individual's personal autonomy while simultaneously enhancing his/her quality of life.
Habilitation, in short, is teaching the skills that are necessary for individuals to live as independently as possible. The first time that the habilitation argument came about was in the Wyatt versus Stickney class action lawsuit. This happened in an Alabama court in the 1970s. It was quoted during this court case that people with disabilities have a right to receive such individual habilitation as will give each of them a realistic opportunity to lead a more useful and meaningful life and to return to society. Since this court case, there have been many acts passed, such as the Developmental Disabilities Assistance and Bill of Rights Act in 1979, the Educational for All Handicapped Children Act of 1975, the Rehabilitation Act of 1973, among many others. Many of these state legislators have mandated habilitation in service delivery for people with disabilities. Also, it is important to note that many of the funding is contingent on whether or not there is compliance with the habilitation standards that focuses on teaching independent living skills. With habilitation, it is more up to the service provider to deem which skills are to be taught based on the state legislator, and the client has little to no say. In the article, Balancing the Right to Habilitation with the Right to Personal Liberties, the Rights of People with Developmental Disabilities to Eat Too Many Donuts and Take a Nap, by Bannerman, Sheldon, Sherman, and Harchick in 1990, the authors go into detail on each side of the debate. The focus heavily is on the ways in which people give up their personal liberties and how personal liberties can be compromised. It also discussed how there should be a need for habilitation over the need for personal liberties. But the authors also discussed the benefits for choosing personal liberties over habilitation. Research issues are briefly discussed, and near the end of the article, Bannerman et al. Discuss ways in which both the need for habilitation and the right to choose can be achieved. When originally gathering research for this debate topic, this was one article that all of our group members discovered upon our first meeting. This reference for this article will be listed at the end of the presentation, and I highly recommend that everyone takes the time to read this, as it gives a good foundation to this debate topic with an unbiased conclusion section that will make one think more in depth about their current practices in the field of ABA.
Next, we're going to go into more detail about personal liberties. During this, we will discuss the relevant ethics code. Then we will go into one case study that will go over the students with quadriplegia at the University of California. Then, after that, we will discuss another case study about John, who is on the autism spectrum, and his health. After the case studies, we will then go into the pros and cons of personal liberties.
Again, personal liberties is the right to choose and refuse. Everyone has the right and ability to make choices on some level, even a person with profound mental retardation. People with developmental disabilities are guaranteed the same basic rights as other citizens of the same country and same age, as stated in the Declaration of Rights of Mental Retarded Person. First, use of the term equality typically refers to equal protection under the laws as stated in the 14th Amendment of the United States Constitution. In other words, all citizens are entitled to the same rights, and specific populations of citizens are treated equally, only are entitled to the same rights. When they are founded the same rights as everyone else. Personal liberties allows individuals to make choices in any situation that may improve their performance, quality of life, and independence. Next, I'm talking about relevant ethic codes to personal liberties. Ethic codes relevance are 2.09, involving clients and stakeholders, 2.10, collaborating with colleagues, 2.11, obtaining informed consent, 2.16, describing behavioral change intervention before implementation, and 3.01, responsibility to clients. I think all of these are relevant to personal liberties because they build trust and promote independence for individuals with disabilities to advocate for themselves. And also it just builds that trust again as a behavior analyst and a future behavior analyst to basically act in the best interest of our clients and take appropriate steps to support clients' rights, maximize benefits, and to do no harm. Next, Paige will be discussing case study 1 and case study 2.
The first case study we will discuss will talk about students with quadriplegia. In 1960, these two students got accepted into the University of California at Berkeley. Instead of normal dorm life, these students were admitted into the university hospital to live. More students with quadriplegia were admitted the same way. They all started asking themselves why they were in the hospital instead of the dorms. Then they realized that the dorms were not accessible to people in wheelchairs. They also realized that they could not move freely around Berkeley. For example, there were no curb cuts so they could access the sidewalks. After all of this realization, they founded the group called the Rolling Stones. They advocated for their needs at the university. As a result of this, the university ended up opening up the first disabled students' office. The Rolling Quads did not stop there. They changed their name to Independent Living. They then started work on improving all the city of Berkeley. They opened up the first Independent Living Center and helped start a worldwide movement. All of this started by the Rolling Quads taking their own habilitation and rehabilitation into their own hands by identifying their own goals for their living. In the second case study, I'm going to be talking about a 54-year-old man with autism named John. John lived in a residential placement facility since the age of 5. When John got older, he was at risk of health issues due to being overweight. John has a higher risk of skin breakdown. He did not like to shower, and he did not like to be repositioned in his wheelchair and preferred unhealthy foods. Because of these health concerns, a treatment plan was created to help improve John's way of life. They started by educating John and his family on the health issues he struggled with. They then took John's preferences into consideration when coming up with the treatment plan. John was still allowed to make his own choices, even though if they weren't aligning with the treatment team's goals. Strategies were then developed to encourage healthy choices, and the treatment team worked to identify ways to motivate him to shower. The treatment team found out that John is highly motivated by attention, social praise, and participation in activities. The team then developed a healthy menu with his input. John was allowed to participate in grocery shopping and chose which meals he wanted for himself. John also was given a self-monitoring chart that kept track of his hygiene routine. Every time he showered, the staff would provided him with attention and praise. John also enjoyed showing the chart off to staff members. In result of this, John became more involved and cooperative with choosing meals and practicing good hygiene. Even though John still had access to unhealthy food options, he still chose more healthy options. John became more motivated to make better choices because he was being reinforced by verbal praise, attention, and participating in grocery shopping for himself. The treatment plan was successful because it incorporated his right to choose and took his preferences into consideration. As a result of this, John has reduction in skin issues and weight. In this case study, John was given a treatment plan, but he was still allowed to make his own decision.
The two case studies that were previously mentioned were two real-world examples of how the right to choose can improve the overall quality of life with individuals with disabilities. It could also be argued that their overall self-determination was increased as well. Self-determination wasn't applied within the context of intellectual disabilities until the 1900s. It was defined by Michael L. Waymire, who is a distinguished professor in special education at the University of Kansas. He defined self-determination as acting as a primary causal agent in one's life and making choices and decisions regarding one's quality of life free from undue external influence or interference. Individuals with disabilities should be allowed to make decisions on their own behalf without outside influence, and there is a link between self-determination and the overall quality of life. A study conducted by Waymire and Schwartz measured quality of life using the quality of life questionnaire, and self-determination was measured using the ARC's self-determination scale. A life choices survey was given to the participants to measure the number of choices available. The results from the study, based on discriminant function analysis, showed that scores for high self-determination were correlated to high quality of life, which was also in correlation with the opportunity to make their own choices. When denied the right to choose, individuals with disabilities have little input on where they live, work, or even the foods they are able to eat. Work settings can also be restrictive and unaccommodating to their individual preferences. Several studies have shown that individuals with disabilities who moved from restrictive living environments to less restrictive community-based settings had a greater quality of life and overall life satisfaction. And this slide is just showing an example of what the quality of life questionnaire and the ARC self-determination scale look like in those studies. While there is extensive research that supports the rights to personal liberties or the right to choose, there are still counter arguments that are posed against individuals with disabilities having those rights. It is argued that they may engage in stereotypic behaviors, choose to take naps, or engage in self-injury during times of leisure. They may also choose skills that they haven't yet mastered, such as meal prep or going to rides on local transportation. It's true that other members of the society are able to engage in unproductive or unsafe behaviors. However, it is believed that they understand the consequences of their actions and already have the necessary repertoire skills to sustain their daily lives. Individuals with disabilities, however, may require rigorous teaching to learn those very same skills, and therefore it's the responsibility of stakeholders to make decisions on their behalf in the meantime.
For this section of the presentation, we will be discussing the need for habilitation. Ethics codes will be presented that we found relevant for the need for habilitation debate. Then 2 case studies will be discussed, followed up with pros and cons. Finally, a fine balance will be presented. The ethics codes that we found relevant to the habilitation debate are as follows. 2.01, providing effective treatment. 2.02, timeliness. 2.19, addressing conditions interfering with service delivery. 3.01, responsibility to clients, and 3.11, documenting professional activity. For providing effective treatment, we believe this is relevant due to this code relating to the protection of clients' rights and needs in service delivery and to protect clients from harm. One could argue that because of this code, what may be right for the client could be something that they wish not to do, such as a certain program or behavioral plan. The timeliness code can relate to how long it takes for a behavioral analyst to get habilitation programs approved for funding from insurance companies or by the state. Delays from insurance reports can put a pause to services and can delay any habilitation funding from insurance companies or by the state. The addressing conditions interfering with service delivery code is also relevant because some service deliveries may be restricted by environmental conditions. If a certain treatment or implementation of a program that relates to habilitation cannot be effectively or correctly implemented, then this code could potentially be violated. 3.01 is relevant to habilitation because BCBAs have a duty to act in the client's best interest and to support client rights and maximize their benefits. They also have to abide by laws and regulations. This code has the potential to be violated if a BCBA puts the need for habilitation over needs for the client. Finally, Code 3.11 is relevant because in order to abide by habilitation state laws for service delivery, one must prove with documentation that they are following the laws. These documents must be detailed and of high quality. In the next slide, we will discuss case study number 3.
Halderman v. Pennhurst went to trial because people who had a wide variety of disabilities were being kept against their will in an unsanitary facility that restricted their daily activities. When the trial ended, it was decided that the Constitution would be upheld by reinforcing the idea that each person has the right to be provided with habilitative services that meet 2 qualifications. First, that they are minimally adequate, and second, that they are in the least restrictive environment. These requirements for services are important so that the level of services received by an individual meets their specific needs. Additionally, learning in the least restrictive environment allows the individual to be able to receive services while in the setting that best suits them and provides them with the most learning opportunities. Additionally, determined because of this case is that every individual should be free from conditions that subject the individual to harm. People have the right to habilitative services in the least restrictive environment because of the Equal Protection Clause, which states that any individual cannot be denied life, liberty, or the pursuit of happiness without due process of law. Overall, the Halderman v. Pennhurst case led to the agreement that the goal of habilitation is to allow each person to become as independent as possible. Next, I will be reviewing case study number 4. Olmstead v. LC was a case that led to an agreement that habilitative services should be available to the individuals who need them in the most appropriate and integrated setting possible. This upheld the notion that community services should be available to individuals with disabilities. Additionally, institutionalizing people for the reason that they have a disability is unlawful and directly contradicts the constitutional rights of those individuals. While there are requirements for community-based habilitative services, it should be considered when the following conditions are met. First, community-based services are appropriate. This could mean that the individual receiving community skills has the basic skills to accomplish some community tasks, but may also need help completing all skills necessary to enjoy a community outing independently. Second, the individual receiving these services is not opposed to habilitative services in the community. Services can be a private matter for some people, and they may wish to receive services in their own home or in a more private setting. These individuals cannot be forced to accept services in the community. Lastly, habilitative services in the community must be able to be reasonable to accommodate. If these conditions are met, then community services are deemed appropriate. Overall, the Supreme Court decision in Olmstead v. LC led to the ability of residents in the state of Georgia to be able to seek habilitative services in the community rather than being institutionalized.
I will now be discussing the pros to habilitation. In the article, Adults with Autism, Habilitation Challenges in Practice by Gideon and OB in 1996, the authors presented 5 key strategies that they believed have been proven effective for habilitation challenges. The first is environmental organization. If the environment is highly organized and clearly defined, then not only is it easier for the employees who are implementing interventions, but also it is easier on the clients receiving services. The use of daily schedules can be beneficial to this strategy. The second strategy recommended is providing the clients with meaningful activities. By organizing meaningful activities, this will hopefully achieve client attention and involvement. One example that was given is having older clients be involved in the process of planting a seed and watching it grow while maintaining the plant, then being able to pick the flower or fruit after it is done growing. This third strategy is structured programming. With structured programming, it is important to have detailed program instructions, so if the client is able to complete the task independently, then they can follow the directions as written with little to no prompting needed. Or if prompting is necessary for clients, then staff members can implement the procedure with fidelity across team members. The fourth strategy is managing repetitive behaviors. If a behavior has no negative impact on the client or the environment, then ignoring the behavior can be an effective strategy. For behaviors that do have a negative impact, finding appropriate replacement behaviors is recommended. Finding activities and tasks that involve the client and have their attention elsewhere can also be appropriate for reducing repetitive behaviors. These strategies are more client-specific, but by evaluating the repetitive behavior and identifying the precursors to the behaviors, managing repetitive behaviors is possible. Finally, the fifth strategy is enhanced interaction. This strategy helps clients with meaningful social interactions and introduces interactive activities that are client-specific that increases daily interactions with staff members and other peers or clients. We also wanted to touch briefly on some relevant areas of intervention in the educational habilitation process that we found from the neurodevelopmental disorders and development of project of life in a lifespan perspective between habilitation and quality of life article by Cavanola et al. In 2020. Those 5 programming areas are intersubjectivity, game and free time, communication, personal hygiene, and basic autonomous behaviors. All 5 of these intervention areas can benefit the client when it comes to independence and living a good quality of life while also meeting the requirements of habilitation. We also found in the same article some assessment tools that support habilitation practice in the areas that were mentioned previously. These assessment tools are as follows: VB-MAP, the PEP3, Denver Model Curriculum Checklist, and ABLES. All of these relevant areas of intervention and assessment tools are recommended for clients that are of a younger age or for clients that are delayed in their development. Here are some images of the assessment tools that were mentioned in the previous slide. We have the VB-MAP, the ABLES-R, the PEP3, and then the Denver Model Checklist. When it comes to the cons of habilitation, there are 6 challenging behaviors that Gideon and Obi explained in their Adults with Autism Habilitation Challenges in Practice article. The first challenge is abstract concepts. Individuals with ASD typically have a hard time understanding abstract concepts, which can lead to misunderstandings as well as errors, especially with the production of verbal communication. The second challenge is dealing with concepts of time, distance, relative size, temperature, and feelings. Currently at my work, we have a client that struggles with these concepts as they religiously ask to go home after lunch, even though the client still has 3 hours before it is time to go home. Maladaptive behaviors typically arise at this point as the client does not understand that no matter what happens, they won't be going home until the designated pickup time. The third challenge is judgment due to this topic typically requiring more attention to detail, situational cues, and concrete and abstract concepts. Individuals with ASD may have difficulty making decisions on their own, such as what kitchen item to use, what clothing to wear, and consequences for their actions. One good example of this would be a client who is unable to plan for the weather when getting dressed in the morning. The fourth challenge is dealing with change. Individuals with ASD can be very rigid about routines, time schedules, or location of activities and people typically involved in their day-to-day activities. An example of this would be changing up furniture in a living room or having a different adult pick them up from school than what they are typically used to. Individuals with ASD may experience a lack of initiative as well. The fifth challenge is focused on preservative behaviors and compulsive rituals. These obstacles can lead to difficulties with teaching and learning new skills and may cause maladaptive behaviors that could impact service because of these challenges. Finally, the sixth challenge is social interactions. Individuals with ASD have difficulty making eye contact when speaking to others. They may also not be able to actively participate in conversations because they cannot read people's body languages or facial expressions or vocal inflection. The reasons why all of these challenges are a hindrance to habilitation is because these are typically the skills that would be targeted in a habilitative style program, with the goal being for the individuals with ASD to gain their independence and live a less intrusive or restricting lifestyle.
I will now be reviewing the article A Fine Balance by Jillian Craigie. In the article A Fine Balance by Jillian Craigie, the author outlined that it is important to have good communication with clients or patients that you work with. Motivation to receive services is imperative to any individual's success. However, respecting an individual's autonomy and what they want for themselves can be more than just having them accept or refuse services. By explaining to our patients that there are goals that we want them to reach so that they can live a more independent lifestyle can motivate them to participate in habilitative services. We can also include their favorite activities as well as exciting choices so that they have some authority and autonomy over what happens in the habilitative services. By allowing them to set the time of services, this gives them the power to know when services will take place. Additionally, providing reinforcement for engaging in services and learning new skills can be another great way to motivate patients to engage in habilitative services. Additionally, this article highlighted that individuals who are trusted with some decisions, but not bigger decisions like the goals and outcomes of habilitative services, can see themselves as more dependent. This can also affect their self-esteem. Thus, it is important to have patients engaged in decisions about their habilitative services. Overall, the article stated that it is imperative that there is support for habilitative services from the individual or the family of the individual, and altering the decisions that they can make about services may allow for more support. Now I will be going over the closing arguments for habilitation and personal liberties. In thoroughly researching this debate prompt, we have learned that the need for habilitation has become more accessible through the upheld statements of laws and the Constitution. It has allowed for people to become as independent as they can be and allowed for a more progressive and inclusive society. However, when people are not trusted to make their own decisions about their treatment, it can lead to a decreased sense of self-worth, so it is imperative that clients are able to make as many choices about treatment as possible. Personal liberties can be a part of an individual's main terms of self-expression as they are able to advocate for themselves. This autonomy that the individual is able to exercise can lead to a higher sense of self. However, some individuals are not capable of making decisions about their treatment. Thus, a protocol that deciphers who is able and therefore who is unable to make decisions about their treatment needs to be explicitly written. Self-expression is able to be exercised in treatment through the choices of activities and reinforcers without affecting treatment progress or availability.
And these are our references for the articles that we found, and the next slide is the picture references. Thank you.